What I'm most afraid of is the unknown and the curiosity that I hold for it. I stand on the edge of a decision to push all that I fear down or to dive right into it. This fear has the strength to pull me deep into its paralyzing abyss. I reach out for anything to keep from falling into the darkness. The weight above forces me to release my control over to something bigger. And I can finally break free as I make my way back to the surface. I turn to face the uncertainty and somehow feel stronger. It's no longer, will I come back to air? But when will I? The light on the surface illuminates that which confines me, and I remember that I've overcome this before. This perspective reminds me that I'll be okay. To be straightforward, that perspective, that's hope. That's what brings me back here. Hi, my name's Luke Adams. I'm a commercial filmmaker based out of New Haven, Connecticut, and I'm the crazy guy standing on top of the glacier in Greenland about to dive underneath. This stunt is actually based off my own experience with anxiety and my desire to do something bold to bring the rarely talked about cause of men's mental health to the surface. Anxiety is something that I've battled with my entire life but lack the courage to share. I wouldn't tell my parents, I wouldn't tell my friends, and I definitely wouldn't consider therapy at the time. This tendency to hide our invisible battles away from the world is what makes men's mental health so difficult to treat.
Most men don't feel like they have permission to speak about their emotions or what's going on in their lives.
You don't talk about your fears, you don't talk about your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, your emotions as a man.
Nobody talks about men's mental health because of the level of vulnerability that men are not willing to take when it comes to the weaknesses that they may have.
I mean, the obvious stereotype of the alpha male, you can't talk about your feelings, you know, if you cry, you're weak.
What they do is they hold in all their emotions versus actually talking about it or talking to a friend about it because they feel like they have to be stronger. So even though we see that depression is more prevalent in women, it's because the women are able to go talk about it versus the men, they feel like they can't.
Men across the globe are dying too young. You know, consider the fact that in the US, 4 out of 5 suicides are men. Over 100 men and boys are taking their own lives every day. I mean, that's a staggering statistic and a staggering loss of life. If more men start having conversations about their mental health, it can be life-saving.
The idea of freediving underneath a glacier came from a dream I had where I was able to face my fears by diving right into them instead of hiding from them like I always had before. The only problem was at the time I didn't even know how to swim, and one of the things that terrified me more than anything else was deep water in the ocean. To me, swimming underneath an iceberg was symbolic of facing the invisible battles that many of us hide below the surface. Despite the challenges that laid ahead, I knew that men's mental health deserved to be heard, and this crazy idea would allow me to use my voice and my own experience with anxiety to talk about men's mental health in a unique, never been done before way.
My name is Luca Malaguti. I'm a Canadian freediving champion, professional freediver, and spearfishing instructor. To freedive under an iceberg, go down, spend time under it, go under one and come out the other side without a wetsuit presents an enormity of challenges. One of them being hypothermia, one of them being you can get lost. There could even be, even at a young age, he could have had a cardiac issue, a cardiovascular problem. Even something as simple as his eyelids freezing underwater and panicking. So Luke comes down to Dominica only 4 months before the shoot in Greenland, June. Well, there's no other way to say it. To my standards, at least, I have very high standards as an instructor and a coach, he wasn't a very good swimmer. We had to swim every day 300 meters to the platform, and it took 3 to 4 times as much as it should have. On one day, I remember where he just wouldn't give up. You know what I mean? Like, he was exhausted. We had been diving for hours. We had to swim back. I could see in his face that he was not comfortable. And I was like yelling at him, but at the same time, I was encouraging him, and he would not give up. And that's the day I knew, like, we're gonna pull this off, because this guy, even though he needs to improve a lot on his technique, he has an immense will to not give up. I knew that we would start doing training without a wetsuit there in 26, 27 centigrade water. And already he would start training his mammalian dive response, which is the ability of the body to adapt in water, to start shifting the blood response so that it can maintain core temperature, and also send the oxygenated blood from the extremities, the peripheries, to the core, to the heart and the vital organs. So that's a response that you train in freediving. And then Luke made sure to keep up his cold water adaptation training when he was living in New England, Vermont in the wintertime. So he would go diving in frozen lakes.
In order to pull off a nearly impossible project like this, I knew I had to find the right people to help make it happen.
You got to invite people that know this environment. Dan Verhoeven, one of the best underwater videographers and filmmakers, a guy that's been on Nat Geo, GQ. I convinced him to join the project. Of course, I got Tim Emmett, who's one of the world's best ice climbers, to come on board to take care of ice climbing operations, because we needed to get Luke on top of an iceberg safely. I also got Brian Hockenstein, who's an amazing Canadian filmmaker.
Been involved in action sport filmmaking for over 2 decades now, but most of my experience has been in the mountains, in the backcountry of the high mountains around British Columbia and all over the world.
But all of these guys could also free dive. They could also hold their breath underwater. They could also film, fly drones, be safeties, be assistants. So that it was like everybody on this project had to be able to wear multiple hats.
I knew we had to partner with the right purpose-driven brands to amplify the impact we were trying to create for men's mental health.
So Movember is the leading charity dedicated to changing the face of men's health on a global scale. We focus on mental health and suicide prevention, prostate cancer, and testicular cancer. What we know is the dire state of men's health affects us all, and we at Movember want to help men take a more active approach to their mental and their physical well-being.
My name is Zach Jewell. I'm the founder and CEO of Into the Dark Blue. We are a men's mental health organization focused on providing space for guys to learn to understand their emotions better and learn how to process life's struggles a little bit more efficiently. We are building a network of men's groups at independent breweries around the country, and also working on creating more accessible and affordable mental health care for men.
So I'm Robert Patton. I'm the CEO of SHEATH Underwear. I exited the Army about 11 years ago, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I've always been very interested in men's mental health. So we decided to join this project with Luke and design a very special pair, the Iceberg pair, where a portion of the proceeds are going to be donated to men's mental health awareness.
With the team ready to go, we all flew into Iceland for the final week of training. Then we flew from Reykjavik to Kulasut, Greenland, before taking a boat ride to the village of Tasiilaq.
A quick ATV ride down to the water later, and it was time to take boats over to Tasiilaq. Something we were warned had a bit of spiciness involved. Navigating between literal icebergs and pieces of ice, using the boat as a propulsion device.
After taking that 3-hour boat ride through icebergs to get to the town of Tasiilaq, we were really in the middle of nowhere.
Tasiilaq is one of the most remote places in the world. Just 105 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, it has a population of under 1,600 people. Unfortunately, this region is also facing a dire mental health crisis of their own. Greenland has the highest suicide rate of any nation. Mental health is something that truly connects us all, from the busiest cities to the most remote villages on Earth. With more than 800 million people affected globally, we need to start giving this issue the attention it deserves.
In the front, yeah? Okay.
So I'm going to take one person.
Well, that's good.
When we finally landed in Tasiilaq, there was just a little bit of light left. We were all just so excited to get in the water, there was no time to waste. We dropped the bags, jumped right back on the boat, threw our wetsuits on, and off we went, looking for icebergs.
You're on an iceberg. Here you go. Thank you. Yeah, Tim, there you go. Zero degree water. But Dan's got -1.
When it was finally time to get the official shoot going, off we went. We found our first iceberg. Luke stripped down to his skivvies and into the water he went. This was the biggest question mark hanging over the whole project. Would Luke, and even with all his training, be able to withstand these absolutely freezing cold temperatures, actually below zero?
The second I dove into the Greenland waters for the first time, I could feel my body freezing from the inside out. I honestly, in that moment, started to second guess if this project was even worth it or even possible. Months of training, tens of thousands of dollars spent, and a world-class crew waiting for me, and I'm ready to throw in the towel on the first day we're in Greenland.
Sure enough, despite Luke's commitment, it was a little scary there at the beginning. I remember when he came out of the water that first time, he was shaking so hard, couldn't even do up his zipper. I mean, this was really a moment where I think we all kind of looked at each other, exchanged some glances and said, is this even going to be possible?
A small little idea enters your mind, a little fear, and it says, what if you can't pull this off? What was the whole point of this? Why are you doing this? Why?
That first night in Greenland, my anxiety was at an all-time high. I'd felt like I let my team down. I couldn't sleep for more than 30 minutes that night, and I was struggling to remember why I even wanted to do this in the first place.
We had identified hurdles, obstacles, but then we knew that the second day we would go out and we would give it a shot. He was, of course, projecting fear in his mind, and we had to work through that. And in the end, that was the biggest challenge. It wasn't the physical aspects of doing what he had to do. It was a real big mental game. And that's why this has a lot to do with mental health awareness. So it was basically a very stoic speech. I told him the famous quote from Seneca, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that's what Luke was doing. He was starting to suffer in imagination more than in actual reality because he hadn't even jumped in the cold water yet.
Relax, close your eyes, don't worry about it. That's it. Focus on yourself. Don't focus on anybody else. Close your eyes. Breathe. Breathe. Hug the
As I started to pull myself down the line, descending deeper into the cold ocean, that freezing sensation started to slowly disappear until it was completely non-existent by the time I reached the bottom of the iceberg. Surprisingly, despite being in one of the most uncomfortable environments imaginable, I felt more present than I had in years. Even with the pressure from the depth, the freezing water temperatures, and having to hold my breath all that time, I was able to channel a state of inner relaxation that brought my focus to the present moment and away from the future.
That was amazing. There you go. Breathe, my friend. Breathe.
And we developed a protocol that would allow us to get what we needed. So before we would even dive, Luke and Tim would go out and scope the iceberg. They'd set up the rope. Luke would get in the water, do his 2 dives. Everybody had their role. Everybody had their place. Take the mask, run the safety, pull the rope away.
As soon as Luca grabbed my mask, that was my cue to start swimming over to the iceberg. Then Dan would start recording and we'd capture as much footage as we can get before we both needed to come back to the surface for air.
And then when Luke would come out, it was go time. On went the suit, warm socks, heat, water, all the rest. We'd dump him on land, he'd jog around a bit, and it was only through developing this protocol that we were able to get everything we needed.
Oh my God, yeah. It's cold. Can't feel my fingers and toes. Oh, I literally can't. Ooh.
I'll be taking one more time. Maybe the best day.
Oh, yeah.
The hardest dive was definitely the shot where I'm sinking underneath the iceberg. To achieve the sinking effect, I actually had to exhale the oxygen out of my lungs before I even started the dive. Even though this shot was the most challenging, it was also the most important to me because it symbolized how our own anxiety and fears could pull us down into this deep, paralyzing abyss that many of us who experience depression or anxiety can relate to. Through embarking on this journey, I learned that even my deepest rooted fears could be overcome with the right training, the right mindset, and the right team. By facing what we fear most instead of hiding from it, we become stronger, more resilient, and more at peace in the process.
But not everybody has to go to Iceland and Greenland and free dive under an iceberg like Luke. The point of this was to really grasp people's attention. But people can face their fears in many different ways. People can deal with depression and mental illness in many different ways. And it could be as simple as taking the step to call somebody and asking for help. It could be that simple.
Through this project, I encountered fears that I couldn't overcome alone. For the first time in my life, I had to learn to be okay with being vulnerable and rely completely on my team to help me overcome my fears. My message to men is be comfortable asking for help. You don't have to fight your invisible battles alone. Become a man of more words and inspire others in your life to do the same, and we can start a chain reaction that saves lives.